Welcome, everybody, to the CCI Systems Make Life Better podcast. CCI Systems uses over 6 decades of telecommunications experience, comprehensive network assessments, industry-leading engineering, and in-depth consulting to discover and solve your most complex business and technical challenges. And don't forget about our 24/7 support and knock capabilities. So much to offer the industry, but today we want to talk about HFC and HFC operators and some of the challenges that may exist in today's world, especially with what's going on with coronavirus and the elevated use of the internet and the need for bandwidth needs. So with me today, I have Stu Lahti from CCI Systems and Chad Kay. Guys, welcome.
Good morning, Joe.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. And I don't know if I said it, but I'm Joe Smith, also from CCI Systems. So guys, we've talked about this idea of mid-split upgrades for HFC operators for years. And we've performed this for many of our customers today. Recently, an article came out in Light Reading. It was published on the 17th of March by Jeff Baumgartner, senior editor at Light Reading. And he interviewed Tom Clunan of CommScope. He's a CTO over there for broadband. The article really jumped into this topic of mid-splits, the need for upstream bandwidth enhancements. So Stu, talk a little bit about that. Is this something that operators can take advantage of today?
Yeah, very much so. We have had multiple customers over the last year and a half come to us to help them with a mid-split solution. What they're finding out is that the bottleneck is coming in the upstream. They've split nodes, to get more downstream capacity, but now it's truly the upstream that's a limiting factor on the spectrum for usage. So it's becoming more and more a thing for them to do. We've also had customers who come to us where they're saying, hey, should we go fiber to the home or should we upgrade our HFC plant? So we analyze both, and by far, if you have an existing HFC plant, the economics is for HFC, especially with the technology with DOCSIS 3.1s, and you can offer the same services as fiber to the home. So it's highly.
Gotcha. You jumped around. You touched a lot of topics that we'll get into today through that. But with mid splits and we spoke about this upstream enhancement. Chad, talk about that upstream. Like, why the upstream now?
Well, the industry was so focused in the last 5 years on just providing the fastest possible content to the customer. So everything was all in a downstream aspect. Now with people working from home, your YouTubers that are out there that are doing podcasts and types of video that are uploading to the internet, the strain has come to the upstream because there was a limited amount of bandwidth that was out there. So now with especially with coronavirus going on, now with everybody working from home, uploading files, communicating back and forth via the internet with home-based data centers, Google Drives, you name it. Everything's trying to go back upstream, and there's only a limited amount of space. So the mid-split opens up that pipe. It takes away that chokehold on the upstream.
Got it. And with the mid-split, Stu, you and I have spoken in the past about you only can split a node so many times, and some have already done that. Is that a realistic problem?
Yeah, it is. It's a realistic problem. We can only split so many times, and the splits in the past were done for the downstream, right? And now it's the upstream that's the bottleneck, and you just can't split them. They've got to increase that amount of spectrum so they can add, more upstream capacity.
So that upstream is getting enhanced really because of what we're doing right here today, right? So many people jumping and broadcasting the other way.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Got it. Now, you guys have a little bit of experience in this industry. Stu, tell us a little bit about your career path and your time here with CCI Systems.
Right. So I've been with CCI for 35 years. I worked in various different capacities. I ran our construction division for several years. I've run our technical field services for several years. I also do a lot of consulting with our customers for technology and planning of their networks, the 5-10 year network planning. So I'm very well versed from construction all the way through the technical side of HFC plants.
So the enduring term of the industry is you are a cable dog.
Yes. True, true.
And Chad, how about you? You've been with CCI, I think, at least 2 decades, right?
Yes. So if Stu is a cable dog, I will be the cable pup. I have been in the industry for 25 years. I handle our team of technical field service engineers and run the TFS department. Also, in overflow capacity, handle a lot of the consulting when Stu is fully engaged with a customer. I take on what other consulting comes our way. So also consulting with HFC professionals in the industry.
Wonderful. So I think 2 perfect experts to talk about this mid-split strategy for many of the HFC operators out there today. Plus, CCI Systems is an operator itself, owns their own cable systems throughout northern Wisconsin and Michigan with Astria. So we've done some of these things already, and not only for ourselves, but a lot of customers. So just want to jump into this article a little bit. Tom Clunan has mentioned, and you guys agree or disagree with this, but typically that upstream maximum speeds in that range of 35 to 50 megabits today. Where do you have to take an operator to on the upstream? The suggestion is a comfortable place is 42 to 65 megahertz is as far as in the next 3 to 4 years is where you want to go. So correct all that mumble jumble that I may have just completely mixed up.
So a quick swing at it. The options available today are, your 85 megahertz split, and some have the potential to go to 200 megahertz splits. Now they all come with their own hurdles and pitfalls that have to be discussed, which is what we work with our customers on. But in the industry moving forward, there's wider band mid splits coming down the pipeline to allow the evolution of DOCSIS to whatever the industry's been hearing about with DOCSIS 4.0. And that more so towards your 300 megahertz splits, maybe even potentially up to 600 megahertz splits. With the early development of it, it's still kind of a gray area. It's not fully baked yet, if you will, but the industry right now has available to 85 or 200 megahertz mid splits capable.
And that's our suggestion of where we need to get operators to.
Correct, and it really depends on said customer. One of the things that I kind of, is my cornerstone for conversation with every customer. There is no 2 customers alike. So the importance is to start to learn the customer system, start to learn what they have to date to make that evolution to the next stage a little bit more comfortable for them. So there's no one cookie cutter to say that people should be doing 85 or 200. It really depends on their current technology, what their plans are to move forward, and what would be the easy steps to get them there.
Understood. Oh, go ahead, Stu. I feel like you're chomping at the bit.
I was gonna add on to that too. So Chad's spot on, and nothing's cookie cutter, right? And some other factors that take into consideration too is competition, right, that they have in the area. To enhance their network to push out the competition. And again, with the technology, we also like to do is the saturation assessments too, right? To see where their bandwidth usage is and the consumption of their customers. So you can actually schedule this out, right? So if you have 100 nodes in your system, you might not have to upgrade all 100 right now, right? To get the additional spectrum you need. And that's where these assessments that we come and do to help the customer say, okay, here's your 100 nodes, and here's the date that you need to get this extra spectrum in the upstream. So they can plan their CapEx over a year, 2 years, whatever it is, right? So you don't have to do that spend all up front. So it's all, you got to tie those all together.
So planning is critical, and we're going to get into planning in a little bit. Stu, it stands out to me. I was at one of our national sales meetings almost a year ago, and unrelated, you told a story about sweep and the fact that some operators believe they need to, when they sweep, they have to sweep the whole plant, and they just aren't willing to invest in that kind of operation. The example you used, I believe, was we quoted $5 million to do the sweep. If you do targeted sweep, you really only needed to do about $1.5 million in services to get all that done, and that was a very large operator.
So, because we come in and do the assessment first, right? So, like they said, oh God, I got to sweep my entire plant. No, you don't. You know, we went in there, we did the assessment, found the areas where it was bad, right? And we knew it was bad by doing the testing. And to sweep the whole plant would have been, what, $5 million? So we're gonna get their plant up to speed, the whole thing, for about $1.5 million or something, the number's gonna come in. It saves them money. So we know where the bad areas, we go and take a look at. We're not just gonna say, hey, you gotta sweep your whole thing.
It kind of brings me back to this moment and what we're talking about, real life example of fiber to the home versus doing a mid-split. You know, in order to compete, like you guys said, depending on who's in your footprint, many operators believe, you know, abandon the HFC plant and go to fiber to the home. Where I think what you guys would say, and I want you to discuss this, is no, not necessarily. Fiber to the home in the greenfield areas, but don't give up on that HFC plant quite yet. And we had a real life example of that, where a customer thought they had to go fiber to the home, abandon the HFC plant, did a quote for them, came back very high, tens of millions of dollars to go ahead and abandon that HFC plant and put fiber to the home in. Our solution with the mid-split, a tenth of that, I think it was, and the customer is very happy. How did that go? I mean, tell a little bit of detail on real life experience with a customer like that.
Yeah, so we had a customer who owns several cable systems. He had a fiber overbuilder come in and encroach on one of his HFC plants. He came to us and said, hey, I need to consider going fiber to the home, overlay it on top of my coax plant and abandon the coax plant. And he asked for a quote for that, and we gave him a quote, how much it would cost. And especially this plant, there was a lot of underground. Half the plant was underground. Underground construction is really expensive. And we said, hey, hold on a second. Let's take a look at your HFC plant. Let's leverage DOCSIS 3.1. Let's see if we can do a mid-split, increase the upstream spectrum so that we can offer similar speeds as your fiber to home competitor. We did the pricing on that. It came into a tenth of what a full overbuild would have been of their HFC plant with fiber to the home. We went out there, implemented it, added new CMTS with DOCSIS 3.1. Turned over the keys to them essentially. Here's your new system. They went out to their marketing and did their things, and then lo and behold, 7 months later, he come back and said, "Wow, amazing! They got growth. They got selling higher speed packages. They're pushing the competition back to the point where their competition now is going to say, hey, we're not going to overbuild them." And then he said, "Hey, let's do this for the rest of our systems, which we're going to do now for him." So it was amazing. And a lot of it's just like education people out there with the myth that fiber to the home is better than HFC. So it was a good story for him. So,
and this might get into the article we had mentioned before, cable's next big network move, expanding the upstream in light reading. When you put an article out online, you always have the tendency and hopefully some comments that come back. So one of the things I wanted to bring up that someone did comment on that article, and this person was somewhat against the idea of the mid-split, and kind of the HFC network is not long for this to world once the telcos catch up to speed and get enough fiber to the home. Cable's in big trouble. One of the things they mentioned, and I'm quoting from it, is that the article seems to forget about legacy set-top boxes that still dwell in that mid-band spectrum, and some of the details that kind of dive into some of the potential hiccups, so to speak, that you may run into with a mid-split upgrade. Talk about some of the challenges, both Chad and you, with doing a mid-split upgrade, including this idea of set-top box issue.
I can start with the video aspect of it. I mean, it really, the conversations I've had with customers most recently is the discussion on the downward trend of video. With everybody streaming nowadays, video content is more popular through streaming video. Video product as a cable provider isn't as strong as it used to be 10 years ago. So the concept behind, everything being held back technology-wise due to a set-top box it's not a real hard discussion anymore. To start with, there are options out there. If you do want to keep your set-top boxes out there, the 85 megahertz split does work with that technology. That's why that 85 megahertz split stopped at that point, was because the furthest range of a set-top box that it could evolve to before they stop advancing the set-top box was 110. So it allows for that advancement. It allows for that set-top box to still work on that mid-split. But for other customers that I have conversation with, they're looking at other platforms like Mobi, for example, to be video content provider, which require, it's just internet content at that point. And they go all the way up to 200 megahertz split. So they don't even need that OM controller that works with the set-top box. So it's really a misguided comment, only for the fact that yes, set-top boxes are real. Yes, it's a concern of cable providers, but it's not a showstopper either. So it doesn't really say that you can't be involved with the mid-split if you have set-top boxes. That's not true at all. There's just one of those hurdles I mentioned early on. That's one of them. Making the accommodations for a set-top box is real, and you can do it.
Got it. And Stu, from your experience with doing a lot of these type of upgrades and helping customers plan, any challenges that an operator may want to look at when considering this?
Well, a couple things we recommend. So if they're gonna look at extending the upstream, right? So they're gonna take some of their downstream away. They might have, if they're gonna stay the same amount of spectrum for the downstream, they'll have to look at some of their video and see what they can do there to free some of that up, right? Some of that spectrum that they're gonna need back, right? That they're gonna lose. CAD, MPEG-4 or something like that, right? That they can do to free up more spectrum. Or while you're doing the split, you can also take a look at, it's just incrementally a little bit more cost depending on your existing, again, this is depending on your existing architecture, where you can maybe get an extra 100, 200, 250 megahertz on your downstream while you're doing the upstream upgrade. And that's where we come in with the help with the planning. A customer will come to us and say, hey, I want to look at the upstream here, but hey, can we take a look at the downstream, see how much more incremental costs it would be to add that, because I've got this video and I don't want to really move stuff around with it, for whatever the situation would be. And that's where we come in and help them with the sample designs, right? And say, okay, here's plan A. It's going to cost you this much, just do the upstream, but you have to do this to move these video channels, right? Or here's plan B, where it costs just incrementally a little bit more to get that extended spectrum in the downstream. So, again, it's all planning, having that conversation with the customer, learning his system, and giving him options that make most technical sense, but economically too, right? Because we know you want to stretch that CapEx as far as possible.
Plan. So I think it's safe to say, as far as both of your opinions on HFC plant versus fiber to the home, what do you think? Should it have a future?
I would take the HFC and run it for the next 10, 15 years with, the extended spectrum, DOCSIS 4.0 coming out. There's no way I would spend that much money on fiber to the home when I have a HFC plant that we can continue to use over the next decade, right? Now, again, I think you said this earlier. If you're in a greenfield situation, though, definitely I would go fiber to the home in greenfield, because you're starting from scratch for both, right? But if I have a large HFC plant, I'm gonna utilize it as long as I can.
Yeah, and I'll echo that. I was going to say, I'll echo that. HFC providers don't realize the real estate and the valuable asset they have in the field and what the capabilities are. One of the biggest misnomers out there is that if I have a 550 plant, I can't do anything with it. I have to evolve. And they think that next evolution is fiber to the home. And it really, it's the asset that's been on the field for 30 plus years is making money for other customers out there. So Stu said it, and I'll echo that too. And it really starts with the conversation, understanding what the customer has, and walking through this. One of my bigger conversations with customers is, just look at the core network, which if you compare apples to apples, coax versus coax is a third of the cost. And then when you start adding up the cost to get into the home, then and buy the core network devices, and then the end user experience, that's where those numbers grow as far as distance from fiber to the home versus HFC. So if you look at it from an eighth of a cost to a tenth of a cost, that's where those numbers start adding up. So in reality, don't exclude something that's been out there for 30 years and call it useless. Have the conversation and see what you can do with it.
Got it. And good transition, Chad. Speaking of conversations, we've talked about planning. How does somebody start going down this path? What can we do to help them make a decision at a low cost or maybe no cost initially? How does a operator have a conversation with CCI and get to some of your experience in this area?
It starts very simple. System maps are a huge asset for a customer. Seeing those for us helps give us an insight of their footprint, the area they cover. Gets down to the basics of just just rough numbers to actually give them some idea of where it starts. Understanding the existing technology they have, talking about the nodes, the amplifiers, line extenders, and then get to the passives in the field, the end user experience, what they have in the home. We touched base on set-top boxes earlier, understanding some of their hurdles. Do we need all of it? No, I think the basics are the actives, the plant miles, and the system prints to start with as far as the basics. But in reality, the more information, the better. I even go as far with some of my customers and ask for a deep dive into their CMTS if they're providing internet and see how the modems are operating, so I can give them an insight of how much more their system could improve by doing such an upgrade. Because a lot of people need the justification not only for what they can offer brand new, points does it give my system, so that when they sign the check, they say, okay, not only do we give something new, but look at how much better it's going to operate. This is going to be like putting a tune-up on a car. It's going to run way better.
And Stu, you and I have talked about the reality of that. It was interesting, just to be real. I think you said in the last few months you've had 10 inquiries. Of the 10 inquiries, 8 moved to having a pretty brief conversation with you that then turned more in depth. But you gave them a good idea of what to expect. And then, frankly, the other two, one wasn't ready to really move one direction or the other. The second one was in limbo. So pretty good success after having a conversation and getting even more educated on the topic.
Yeah. We have the initial conversation just to talk and discuss, the issues they're having, where we can help them, and then, like Chad said, gather some documentation and data that we need, and then when we move further down the path is where we do sample designs for our customers, right? And we do those, and that helps verify costs and all that stuff, and make sure technically it will perform right, stuff like that. And, one of the side benefits too while you're doing these upgrades, not only because you have to visit every amplifier location and the lines you're upgrading, right, you're sweeping as you go, it also reduces OpEx, which we have charts and graphs, good stuff that shows that, the OpEx that you save, because you actually tune the plant up and it reduces truck rolls. So not only are you getting the extra spectrum to offer your, more services, it's a side benefit that your OpEx gets reduced and your truck rolls get reduced and your customer sat goes up, because you're also, you're fixing things as you're going along. So.
Great. It's a great point. Everybody's interested in high customer satisfaction. So everyone listening to this, if you do have any interest in learning more about this, we have a lot of ways to contact these guys, contact CCI Systems in general. Email addresses are put up. Also a link within this broadcast is available to kind of give you a step-by-step process on what to reach out to Stu or Chad on this topic. Tons of experience in this area, guys, and we do want to share that outwardly. It costs nothing to make that call or send an email to either Stu or Chad to get a little bit more information. And you'll see more content coming from CCI in the coming days and weeks and months and years on all kinds of different technologies. Next up, we do want to take the next step and start speaking about that whole DOCSIS transition from, even you may not be to 3.1, but what does 4.0 look like? We're going to bring on our experts to talk about that. But get started with the conversation. Comments are welcome on this format as well. We'll get back to you on all of those. But for now, guys, stay safe. Thanks for the conversation. And I really appreciate the time that you put into joining us and hopefully educating not only our listeners, but starting that conversation and continuing the conversation of HFC versus fiber to the home, and depending what platform you have, what's the best way to make sure you compete in times like this with the need for bandwidth, keeping customer satisfaction high. So once again, guys, thank you very much.
Yep, thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you.